All right, assalamu alaikum everyone. So in this video, we'll talk about learning capacities of infants and toddlers. We'll look into some frameworks of infants and toddlers learning patterns, which includes classical conditioning, operant conditioning, novelty, and habituation. What learning basically is, it refers to change in behavior as the result of experience, right? So, like adults learn, children also use some strategies to acquire information. Babies come into world with built-in learning capacities. Infants are capable of two basic forms of learning, like I mentioned, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. They also have a preference for novelty, uh, for something which is new in the environment. They get attracted and they become curious towards new stimulation. So they show a natural preference for novel things. How classical conditioning helps infants recognize or learn? As you would remember, classical conditioning is a form of learning which is based upon forming associations among stimuli. So children also use the same associative pattern to recognize events that occur together, so they can anticipate what is about to happen next, like adults do. They also, when are able to associate events that coexist or co-occur, they are more likely to anticipate and react in a similar way. And operant conditioning, as you would know, would remember, that is a way of learning through rewards and punishment. So this form of learning is more based upon the consequence of one's action. So children, like adults, also act or operate on their environment, and their response is followed by what kind of consequences received on their behavior. So that means reinforcer is something that increases the likelihood for a behavior to reoccur, whereas a punishment acts as something which discourages a behavior to reoccur. Let's look into examples for each of these two learning patterns. As well, we must be clear with what classical conditioning is and how learning occurs through this procedure, and what operant conditioning is, and learning in operant conditioning occurs through principles of reinforcement. So let's think about how young children, infants of 3-4 months old, can learn through classical conditioning. Very quickly, if we could remember, there are a lot of times when we could see children respond in a very organized and a very repetitive way, or in a very one what you can say, in a very smart way. That is sometimes that form of reaction response to stimulation is learned through classical conditioning, where a child, for example, if the mother makes her child sleep in a dark room, so a dark room or a quiet room naturally evokes a response of relaxation, which instills sleep in a child. So sometimes when a child is made to sleep in a dark room, a mother may sings along while making her child sleep, or may tap on the head, or may rub on the forehead of the child to make her fall asleep, make him or her fall asleep. So that action of singing or rubbing on the forehead can be neutral stimuli, which may be associated with a dark room, which leads to sleep. So let me just quickly write this down so you could quickly associate this. So in response to in When these two events occur together, the child may associate these two stimulations together, and that may evoke a conditioned response in the child. Let me just quickly write this down. Unconditioned stimuli could be dark room, which leads to unconditioned response of sleep, singing could be neutral stimuli associated with unconditioned stimulus linked with unconditioned response. So in the end, singing could become conditioned response, sorry, conditioned stimulus leading to conditioned response of sleep. So this is how the process of conditioning, classical conditioning, works for young children. So for operant conditioning, let's see how the other learning pattern works for children. And sometimes, as we know, so operant conditioning works on rewards and principles. So young children, what would be rewards for young children, infants? So for example, when the child takes the feed and the mother responds to the child by smiling at him or her, that smile could be a pleasant response for the child, and that may enable the child to repeat uh, the behavior of sucking or taking the feed properly. Sometimes when a child is not responding in a pleasant way, a child that may stop the child from reacting, or that may discourages the child to not repeat the action. Also, children prefer novelty, I just mentioned in the beginning. So novelty is something new that occurs, or that there's something new in the environment that helps the child react in a very pleasant and very curious way. This is called recovery. Recovery is a change in the environment that causes responsiveness to return to a high level. When a child is exposed with the same stimulation for over and over again, then another process occurs, which is habituation, which means that the infants tend to respond, uh, uh, you know, with a reduction in response rate towards the stimuli. When they're overly exposed with something, they probably are not too excited about it, and they would show less excitement and less reactivity towards that stimulation. That is called habituation. Um, and again, when something new is bring about in the environment, they show no, because of that newness of the stimuli, they would show recovery, they would show reactivity, heightened reactivity towards it. And that is how they are more curious towards stimulation which is new, which is unknown, which is unusual. These are some of the learning patterns that are followed by young infants. Thank you for this section.